Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our live Friday question and answer class, where we talk about topics for American English pronunciation. I take your questions, so feel free to ask those at any time in chat. If you're new to class, welcome, and if you're returning, thanks for coming back. If you're a subscriber to my channel, you know that you can get notified every time we're live and when I upload new videos, and you can participate in our community page to have quizzes, to get sneak previews of what's coming up. If you haven't subscribed, I suggest doing that if you like this video and if you'd like to learn more about American English pronunciation and our SMART training. So welcome. Today's topic, we're going to be taking your requests for pronunciation. So feel free to put those in chat at any time and I'll help you with your difficult words or things you'd like to know. I'll be answering some requests from earlier in the week. So people will leave me comments and questions on Facebook and on speechmodification.com and on my videos. And I do go check all of those and I keep a list of videos to make for you and things to bring up in class that you've asked me about. So if you're watching this not live, you can still leave a comment and a question and I'll get back to you with that. And I also want to share some new exciting things that are happening here on the channel with you today. So we're going to talk about a new challenge that's coming up, which is my SMART Goals Challenge. So for 2020, we're going to start with teaching you about how to set goals that you can achieve and how that relates to improving pronunciation. I'm going to participate in the challenge with you. I have some personal goals that I'm setting. So I'm going to share with you some of the techniques I use both personally and with my clients to help them make real improvements in their pronunciation and in anything that they're setting their mind to. So I hope you can be a part of that. I will now give you the link for where some of that will be on the website on speechmodification.com, and we'll check in on that later, but I'm going to put that in the chat for you. If you want to check it out, you can go to that page, you can put your name in the comments and I'll know you're participating. You can also make a comment on this video or any of my videos and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. I want to be part of that challenge. Because one of the things that helps us reach our goals is saying that we're going to actually do it and connecting with other people. That helps us be motivated. It helps keep us accountable. And we'll talk about how that works a little bit later in today's class. So thank you for your comments so far. It's nice to see you. Great to have you here. And thank you for the warm welcome about Christmas. I had a lovely holiday, and I hope if you celebrated that, you did too. And New Year's is coming up, so that's our next thing to be looking forward to in less than a week. Okay, so let's start with a few of the requests from this last week. And so one of the questions someone had for me was how to pronounce the city name, which is also a man's name, which is Lawrence. And so pronouncing names that you're not familiar with can be challenging, and it can be hard to find resources to know how to pronounce them. So that's definitely something you can ask me, and if it's a name I'm familiar with, I'll tell you about how to say it. Lawrence is a city in Kansas. And I think what's confusing about this is, again, the way American words are spelled and American names are spelled doesn't really match how they sound. So this kind of looks like it should have a caught law vowel, because here's the word law, but we don't say it like law when we're saying the word Lawrence. We say it more like an or. So the first syllable in this word Lawrence is the same as the word lore. And we do have first syllable stress here. So that means the lore syllable is important and has a clear vowel, and the nth syllable is short and reduced. It almost has no vowel. It's almost like just an NS, Lawrence, Lawrence. If you had to say anything for this vowel, I would say it's a schwa, an unstressed schwa, which just sounds like a. And the other thing that you might find challenging is that you have the L and the or together, lower. So I have to start with my tongue behind my teeth to lift up for the L, and then I have to pull it back and do the tight or tongue with a rounded mouth for the or part, Lawrence. Yeah, so okay, that was one of the requests I had. And if you have a request, you can go ahead and put that, or a question, you can put that in the comments. I'll answer it. It looks like we have a few. A question about how stress and intonation work together. Great. So intonation is kind of the overall umbrella for the rhythm, the stress, the pitch, everything having to do with how we convey meaning through the way we say our words. So pronunciation is the sounds in the word and how we articulate those sounds. Intonation is how we convey meaning through the ups and downs, the pitch, rhythm, and stress. Stress pretty much indicates something that's important versus unimportant. And in American English, stress tends to be done with length. So my stressed word is going to be held longer than my other words. Stress is also shown with pitch. I often rise up on a stress word or fall off to show something is less important. And it's also, stressed words tend to be a little bit louder. And I generally don't suggest trying to be any louder because you'll do that naturally. And just going louder is not enough to stress something, and it can sound strange. So focusing on lengthening and using pitch for stress helps your overall intonation. And then intonation again is rhythm and some other things, and stress is a subcategory of intonation. Great question. I do have an intonation playlist and many lessons on intonation. So I would suggest when you're on the channel page on speech modification, a great way to find out more about intonation is to go here to look at our playlists, and you'll see this one here with 24 videos. It says American Intonation, and that will walk you through some of the basics of intonation, as well as giving you some really specific things to practice to get an ear for understanding it and beginning to use it. So great question, thank you. Now we have a question about the difference between Newark and New York, and there are pronunciation and intonation differences there, as well as this one is a state and a city, and this one is a city in New Jersey. And there are cultural differences between those two places, but I'm sure that's not what you're asking about. So when I say Newark, I have first syllable stress. And even though this looks like arc, Newark, it's actually more of a schwa and an r, or just an Newark, where that vowel is really reduced. So we don't have much of an ah sound there, Newark. And New York, I tend to stress the second syllable or both syllables, New York, but mostly second syllable is more important. So the new is the same. York has an or vowel. So same as this, the word your with a K, New York versus Newark. Yeah, great. So city names are definitely something of interest. I have started some videos for how to say state names, but I don't have all 50 states yet. But you can check those out as well on speechmodification.com or on my channel page. And a question about modal verbs. That's a pretty big category for pronunciation. So if you have some specifics you'd like to ask me about, that's great. And other questions. Okay, so I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about one other request we had, which was someone asked about the word memorable. And I talked about this on Facebook Live today, and also I'll give you a brief recap of that lesson. We were looking at, again, sounds and spelling. First syllable stress in the word memorable. And so that syllable is long and the others are short. And here again, I have my OR that sounds more like ER or a schwa and an R. And in this word, memorable, I often hear that syllable getting reduced, so that's almost just an R sound. So it sounds a little bit more like memorable. And there's my dark L at the end, which has kind of a little schwa before it, an sound, or almost no vowel, memorable. And again, I can go slowly, memorable, and then begin to speed up, and then try to start to use this when I'm using short phrases and sentences. So it was a memorable day. I had a memorable holiday. That was a very memorable experience, etc. I want to begin to integrate that into my speech because, of course, even though when I'm practicing, I may be able to say the sounds or say the word correctly, it can be challenging still to use that in context, which is really my end goal. So speaking of goals, let's talk a little bit about the SMART Goals Challenge and why I think you should join and what it's going to be all about. And so the SMART Goals Challenge is a way for you to identify what things you'd like to change and to begin to take the steps to make those changes. And I'm going to teach you some techniques that you can use for just about any goal. And I'm going to give you a lot of examples for pronunciation. So part of what we'll do is keep it very simple, but keep it something that can apply in a lot of different contexts and help you really see some real progress. And so I use SMART in my Smart American Accent training to stand for speech modifications, accent reduction techniques. And in this case, we're going to talk about SMART in terms of goals, and we're going to have this as an acronym to help us remember some of the important parts of our goals. So the first thing is, when we set a SMART goal, we really want that goal to be specific. So when I start off thinking about what I want to improve, I might start with something very general, like thinking, I want to sound better. I want to have better pronunciation. I want to improve my English. These are all great goals. But if I don't identify something more specific than that, it's hard to see whether or not I made progress, and it can be challenging to know what to do to achieve that goal. So I'm going to lay out for you some very detailed ways of how to get specific on a goal, narrow it down, and make it something that you can actually measure to see if you're making progress and achieve and move on and do the next thing. So we have S for specific. We have M for meaningful. So one of the things that happens when we set a goal is that we really need to think about what's going to have a real impact. So I can have a goal for getting a new job, or for, I don't know, maybe I want to try to be nicer. I want to make more friends. Whatever my goal might be, it needs to be something that I actually really care about and that I will feel good when I've achieved it. It needs to have an impact in my daily life and be meaningful for me. And that's going to be different for everyone, but I tend to I'm going to give you some ideas for something that can help most people who are trying to improve their American accent, improve their English, that will be meaningful and have an impact on your real speech. So maybe I want to be able to say certain words, and that's really going to make a difference for me. Or maybe I need to have some strategies for practicing, or some strategies for my communication that I'm going to specify that will really be meaningful and have an impact for me. So that's the M of our SMART. And then we have the A of our SMART, which is going to be achievable. Again, this is related to something that's more specific. I may need to set a goal, and then if I find out that I've challenged myself a little bit too much, or it's something that's more of a long-term goal, I'm going to narrow it down to something that I can achieve in a certain time span and really get there. Because when I have a big goal, if I don't break it down into steps that I can achieve along the way, I might lose my motivation and I might not really be able to stick with it. So oftentimes people will set a goal. Maybe they want to lose weight, maybe they want to exercise more, and they have something in mind for the future, which maybe they can achieve. But if they instead of trying to make a giant leap all at once, if they make some small steps that they achieve, then they will actually have that goal be very functional for them. Our R in SMART is going to be having a reward. So it might be something as simple as crossing something off a list that we've done, checking it off, or maybe I'm going to give myself something that is rewarding to me. Maybe it's going to be, I have a piece of chocolate, I get a cup of coffee, I get to go to bed early, I get a new book. I don't know what is going to be rewarding for you, and I'm going to make some suggestions, but the way our brains work, if we set ourselves up for steps towards a reward and we reward ourselves periodically for doing the work that we say we want to do, we tend to do better with it. And it doesn't have to be something like a big treat or something that costs you any money, but something that you pair in with the work that you're doing that rewards you will actually be very motivating. So there's a lot of science behind SMART goals and using rewards, and I'll teach you some of that science as well, and you can apply it towards yourself. Lastly, we're going to tell people. So I'm going to talk to you and tell you my specific goals. I'm going to talk about how they're meaningful for me, whether or not I've achieved them, what I'm doing for rewards. I'm going to tell people that I know personally in my life. When I tell people what I'm working on, I'm much more likely to take the steps to achieve it versus keeping something to myself. I don't have any outside influence. We tend to be social as humans. And when I tell someone, I have to also be specific about what it is that I'm doing. And they might check in with me, they might ask me, and I am held more accountable for that. So I'm going to have videos, lessons, and classes for each of these steps over the next few weeks, beginning through January. And I hope that you'll join me in that SMART Goals Challenge. This is just a little sneak preview of what we're going to cover, but it's going to be a great way to set a goal that you can achieve and really see some progress on something that's meaningful for you, something that you want to do. So I hope you'll join me. Again, earlier in the class, I put the link in for where you can join the challenge on speechmodification.com. We will be holding the classes here live on YouTube, and I'll have some additional videos that are not live for you as well. But here on speechmodification.com, on the free practice, you go to online practice free trial, and you'll see that current lesson is the New Year's SMART Goals Challenge. And you'll see that down here in the comments, you can leave your name and tell me you're in. That's one of the first steps, is to tell that you want to be a part of the challenge. You can also join it on Facebook or here on YouTube. I'll have many places on my community page. So here on the channel page, if you go to community, and if you've been following along, you've seen that we've had some sneak previews of some of the SMART goal ideas and concepts, and I'll give you questions and suggestions for goals that you can set, so you can participate there as well. Okay, thanks for listening while I talked for so long. I'll come back to your questions now, and thank you for being patient. We have a question. Pascal followed up with, he doesn't hear a clear ah or o sound for the word warm, So orm. So the word warm is not an ah, it is an o. So it's basically the or sound, war. Same with the word war, like the country went to war. It's the same as this war, like I wore some clothes, warm. And so I think oftentimes when we see the spelled vowels, like the AR, we think, oh, maybe it should have an R. My brain, if I wrote it like this, warm, or like that. The problem is that this is another word, worm, which has the vowel. But if we can find a way to write it where we are thinking about the correct sound, warm, then you'll probably be able to pronounce it. The way you hear things is affected by what your brain thinks a sound should be and what you see visually in the spelling. So find a way to rewrite that so that you can really clue in and hear that it's an or vowel in that word. Great question. Thank you, Pascal. Wendell wants to know about Lawrence. Wendell, we covered that in the beginning of the class. We went through the details. So after class is finished, go back and start from the beginning. And that was the first word I talked about today. So I did recognize your request from earlier, and we covered it. Sorry you missed that part, but don't worry, the details are there. So after we finish, you can watch again from the beginning and you'll see it. We have another question, which is the word relevant. I think what gives people trouble in this word is knowing where the L and where the V should be, because there's another word like relevant, rev with a V there. I don't want to confuse you if you didn't have that problem. So let's break it down. First syllable stress, relevant, short. We have the vowel eh, like red tent, rel. Then we have a schwa, the sound, and vent, a very reduced schwa vowel as well there. So relevant. Sorry, that should be short. Relevant. So if I think about this as being eh, like red tent, and in these, and then vent, very short, relevant, long and short, short. Great question. I'm going to add that one to my list of videos to make relevant because I think a lot of people struggle with it, and it would be helpful. So thank you for bringing that up. Question about whether to use a stop T or an audible T at the ends of words. In most cases, Americans will mostly use a stopped T. If the sentence ends on the T word, if you need to be particularly clear, it's always acceptable to say a T. I can always say I'm going out, it's hot. I can always release that T, but more often than not, Americans will say I'm going out, it's hot. Most of the time, they won't release the T. And then also, if the next word starts with a vowel, I'm doing neither. I'm going to be linking that T, and it's going to sound more like a D or a flap T. So it'll sound like hot out, hot in here, got it. So I will say and release it, but it will be voiced. Great questions. I do have a number of videos about American T and how it works when it's linked, how it works in the middle and ends of words. So I recommend checking those out either on speechmodification.com or on my channel page. I'll show you how to find it on speechmodification.com. And also you can leave comments and questions on these videos and I'll give you the links directly. But if you're in the free practice page that I showed you before, free online practice, there's a search box here. And so I might want to put in, for example, let's see, stopped T. And then the lessons that are related to that question will come up. And you can see here's a lesson about how Americans say the T sound in the start, ends, middle, and ends of words. You can see all the places that I refer to stop T. And these lessons have videos and practice materials and recommendations for you, as well as a lot of example words of when we would do one type of T versus another type of T. Great. Hi, everybody who's joined in. We have a question about the words were and there. Here's another place where spelling is a little confusing because we have ERE in both of these words. This one is an vowel, like her and sure, were, versus this one is an air vowel, like air and hair. So when saying there, I really should be thinking about it as an air diphthong versus were is just the single vocalic sound, were and there. You'll see similar types of videos on my American R playlist that will show you the different types of R diphthongs and regular R that we can say. We have another request. Cooking or dining has an I vowel for the ing part, but some people say that as E, like cooking. So she's mentioning a character on a show, which I'm familiar with the show, but I haven't really seen it enough to know that character or how she pronounces things. If someone is saying the ing with an E sounding vowel, ing instead of ing, that's not very typical for American English, and I would suggest sticking with the I. Usually that syllable is unstressed, and so it's going to be a reduced vowel versus the E sound is a clear vowel that is not usually, it's something we would hear in more of a stressed context. So the other thing that can be challenging is it's hard to hear the difference between these two. They're both very similar. I and E are high front vowels. This one is tense and this one is lax. So for the ing words, stick with this one for your pronunciation. Another question, are the only two semivowels w and ya Yes, that's correct. So these are both things that glide. Sometimes the and ul are considered semivowels because of they function differently than the other consonants. But the w is really like two vowels, the u and an w, and the ya is really an e and an And so that's why they're called semivowels, because we're gliding from vowel to vowel. They're really more like of a vowel than a consonant. The difference between vowels and consonants is that when I say a consonant sound, my tongue or my lips or something, one of my articulators is touching, making contact, like for the P sound, my lips touch together, or for the T sound, my tongue touches a specific place in my mouth. Versus a vowel sound, it's the shape of my tongue and the resonance of the oral cavity. So I have E and ah. My tongue isn't really touching anywhere. It's the shape of it and the way it takes up space. So when I say w and ya, I'm kind of doing two shapes and gliding between them. And that is what makes a semivowel. Okay, another request for the word 8 or the number 8. Exact same pronunciation as this type of 8. So it's an A vowel and a T, which I may or may not say 8, or I may say 8 with a stopped T. The thing to watch out for is making sure you do a diphthong on the American A. It's a longer sounding vowel. We don't want just a single it, because that will sound to Americans like you're saying the vowel in red. So make sure you hold your A vowel long enough and you glide between A and 8. Excuse me. I need a little sip of water. Another question from the same person, 8, and tremendous and sour. Tremendous has second syllable stress, so short on these two, and reduced vowels. So we have an I in the first, the E says I, like tri, and then we have vowel like red tent, mendus, dus. Then we have a schwa for the last syllable. So lengthen, tremendous, tremendous, and reduce your vowels on the beginning and the end. Don't try to say an E for that. Try to make sure that you're using that reduced I sound. Lastly, sour. Sour. Sour is like the word hour and the word hour plus an S. Sorry. Hour as in our class or 1 hour of time plus an S. So the hour has the ow diphthong, which is like a schwa, or like a an aw. Hour. And then there's kind of like a hidden W in there. That's what is a little bit tricky about it. That we have this hour, and our ow sound. Yeah, so thinking about these words relating, that might help you. Checking out my vowels playlist is also going to help you with the small differences between those vowels, and then making sure that you're gliding into your at the end of that word. Great questions. So a couple more questions, and then I'm going to need to wrap up for today. So if I didn't get to your question, or if you're watching later and you have another question, leave it in the comments. I'll also make sure to go through the rest of the chat and answer your questions for you. We'll do the same topic next week, as well as beginning the Smart Goals Challenge, so you can come back and ask your question then as well. So the last few, girl is said like girl, but then people say darling very fast without a gap between the R and the L. How is darling said? Is it different from, say, early or Carl? Yes, so Carl and early are different. So Carl has a dark L at the end, so it's almost like 2 syllables, just like girl. Early has 2 syllables, and there's a light L for the start, and so darling is actually like early. If I had to break up that word, I would have my R syllable and then a light front L starting the new syllable. So to learn how to say it, just say the ling, ling, and then add the dar. Ling, darling, darling. So my R and L really are separate in this case versus Carl, Carl. They're more together, but I kind of insert that or that schwa sound because it's a dark L. So it depends on how I can break up the word. In this word, Carl and girl, there's only one syllable, and so I can't really break up that R and the L. The L doesn't start anything. But in these words, the L starts the li or the ling, so it's just the same as a word like or light that starts with an L. So it's the light front L. If you need more help with the dark L versus the light L, just go on speechmodification.com and search on American L, and you'll see my lessons and videos with example words and showing you how to do those two different types of L sounds. Okay, so I apologize. I can't get to everyone's questions today because I have a session with a client coming up that I have to prepare for, so I needed to end the class just in 30 minutes today. But I really appreciate all your questions and comments, and as I said, I will go back as soon as I'm free later this afternoon and make sure that I answer your questions and direct you to where you can find more resources. And do come back next week. I'll be taking additional questions then as well. And again, I appreciate everyone's participation, and I hope that you can join me for the Smart Goals Challenge. We'll have our first class for that on New Year's Day, just to kick off the new year with a good start. And then we'll have our regular Friday class at 12 o'clock. Next week on Friday, I think that's probably January the 4th. So thank you so much for being a part of class today. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. speechmodification.com.